We are now back live again. Hello, everybody. Sorry about that. If you're confused, this is now part 2 of our Olive discussion. Part 1 is uploaded on our channel. I was a numpty and forgot to make the stream public, so it was streamed privately. Yeah. We are now on to the spoiler part, though. So if you have not read our March book club pick, which was Olive by Emma Gannon, chosen by Janet, I would recommend going away reading this before you come back and watch this, because we are going to be going into spoilers now. So if you want a non-spoilery chat, go and check out part 1 of the stream, because I am an idiot and forgot to public it.
It happens to the best of us, Jazz. Don't worry about
it. Yeah.
It happens.
Anywho. Oh, I should say, before we go into this one, there is a point. I have put up a banner to make sure that people know when it is happening, but we do talk about something that involves non-binary and gender fluid phobia. So if that is distressing to you, you will know when to mute it. I will clearly earmark it, but if you don't want to, don't feel like you have to go and watch the first part of this, because we do talk a little bit about a potentially triggering scene, as well as some of the other triggers that are covered in this book, because we feel like there should have been better triggering information. So, yeah. Anyway, we're on to spoilers. Yeah.
What was I going to say? So we can start this section off by the discussion about, or having a discussion about the different groups within the novel. So each of the friends represent a different person at a different stage, and I quite like that. So obviously there's there's Olive, who is yeah, not for me. B, who's always wanted to be a mother and has 3 or 4 kids, and she's married, and everything seems fine. There's
Sess.
Why have I forgotten all the names? Yeah, thanks. She's got the career, she's got the house, she's got the husband, and she's just had a baby. And then there's Isla, so yeah, who's struggling with fertility. And I quite liked that they're all in a different point. It's not, I don't know, even though it seems like her friends are all on the same path, they're not. And I said earlier in the part 1, I liked how, why have I just forgotten what I was going to say? Oh my god. Anyway, it feels very realistic, because Olive thinks that everyone's on a set path and she's falling behind because she's not with them. But in actual fact, they're not on the same path at all. They're on a completely different route. They're going in different directions and things like that. Because obviously, as you get more into the book, you realize that although Olive thinks her friends have the perfect life because they've got it all, they don't have it all, and it is hard to read, and it is sad, reading about some of the things that happened to her friends. But I think that's what kind of made it realistic, because I think I was a little bit worried that it would be, oh, my friends are so successful in everything because they're married and they have kids and I don't, but I don't need it. The end, I was worried it's kind of going to be that attitude, but I quite like that it was actually, no, this happens to everyone. Everyone has their own struggles and everyone is different. So
Mum, say hi to everybody.
To be honest, actually, kind of going back to earlier, I think that's probably one of my highlights, is just how diverse everyone's journey was. But yeah, I don't know. I guess that's a good way to kick off part 2 for anyone who might have missed part 1.
Yeah.
But I remember reading it and thinking, I don't know, this was just something that came across my mind briefly, to be honest, but it almost seems completely cut me off if this is wrong or whatever, but it seems like it's setting up her friends to start off having this perfect life, and then they end not having the perfect life and not having it all, whereas Olive has kind of done the opposite. She's kind of gone up, and I know that it's meant to be showing that Olive is, I don't know, more than she thought she was maybe, and she is successful in all areas of her life. But I don't know, I just thought it was interesting that her friends kind of, in terms of their personal life and say having kids or getting married and that side of things, theirs all go downhill. I don't know. What did you think about that?
I really like that. I never noticed that before, and
Mhm.
I think it's a journey of self-discovery and that accepting you are enough, no matter whether you want to have kids or not. Because I think that's what she struggles with, is that
Mhm.
she's not enough. Her mum is berating her for working too much when her career is extremely important to her. And it's like at the end she becomes editor-in-chief, and she openly says like this doesn't happen very often because editor-in-chiefs usually die before they leave. So the
Yeah.
chance of getting that sort of promotion is incredible, and it's an amazing opportunity. But I like the thing that you've just said, that everybody else starts off seemingly perfect. Olive is, so they're up here, Olive is down here, and it does that over the course of the book. Now that you mention it, I notice it, but I didn't notice it beforehand, and I think that is a valid way of looking at it. But I really like the way that she writes about it, saying that women, in order to feel fulfilled, don't need to be mothers. But I think the way that Olive goes about it in some ways isn't the best way. She's almost like she's not an aggressive feminist, but she does go about things the wrong way. And same with a lot of the other people around her going, oh, it's just a phase. I think someone actually says it's a phase at one point when she goes to that hippie doctor, and it's just like, have I come out of conversion therapy or something? And I was like, oh boy, yeah, that's exactly what you've just been to, is conversion therapy, but not for gay conversion therapy. And yeah, like those sorts of things that people say, it's like saying to someone with depression, oh, cheer up, or someone with anxiety, oh, calm down.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, literally. It's like I flip-flop between wanting kids, not wanting kids, being happy with fur babies, wanting to like experience being pregnant, things like that. But the way I think about it, I'm only 25. I've got like 20 years that I could be considering having kids, because there is a biological clock, like there is that, but women can have kids into their late 40s and 50s. Like it's not when you turn 30 you're too old to be a mum. So yeah, I think there is definitely pressure on Olive, and I think the pressure that is exerted upon her is released in self-destructive ways almost.
Yeah.
So, and then it kind of starts hitting her friends, and they realize that maybe they don't have it all as together as they could. And I think there is almost like a little bit of jealousy there as well, for Olive and her seemingly carefree existence. So yeah, I'm not sure where this started, but that's where I'm ending it.
No, I think it's a good point. I don't know if you have anything to add, Zoe, to that.
No, I was just enjoying that. I was thinking I think there is a phenomenal amount of pressure on her throughout the whole thing. But I think it's kind of emphasized by the amount of pressure she puts on herself to live up to what she thinks her friends expect of her. And in some ways, I feel like it was quite prominent putting in that scene when they were younger at university. It seems like that's constantly what Olive is trying to keep hold of. And like, why not in my room and like lying on my bed with me and being hungover? And I think that's maybe what the others are getting at. It's like, we're not at university anymore. You can't have everything as it used to be.
Yeah, and I totally leveled with that sort of feeling. Like when I moved out of my uni house, oh, I've just seen Dookie move. I just noticed that he's there. Oh, he's the Dookie baby. Sorry, I get distracted by cats easily. Yeah, I totally level with that, because when I moved out of uni, I wanted nothing more than to be able to go down the corridor and knock on Mariette's room, like knock on her door like I used to, because we lived together for 3 years. And when you've lived with someone for that long, it takes a long time to readjust to everything. And I get that she wants to hang on to the glory days. Like I did that by doing my master's, I hung on to the glory days of uni and act and things like that. But during my master's, I fundamentally changed so much as a person. I came to terms with my depression. I came to terms with my anxiety. I started medication. And I grew up phenomenally in those 2.5 years, more than I had in the 3 years prior. And I think that's what you do when you go out into the real world. You grow up so much more than you ever expect to, so that when you look back on the glory days, it seems like an ideal that you're reaching for. And I really level with Olive, trying to recapture that, but at the same time I'm like, girl, you're in your 30s, like you need to move on. Like life isn't going to stop just because you want to keep a hold of your hungover days and things like that. Things are going to change. People change, people grow up, and you might not want kids and have that responsibility, but your friends do. And in that way, I think she is a little bit selfish, but also I think definitely her friends have a long way to go in understanding Olive and her standpoint on things.
Yeah, I think it definitely goes both ways. Like, you know, the main point of the book is how her friends don't really understand her point of view, but she doesn't always take the time to understand theirs either. And I think it was good that it showed that she's flawed and, you know, she's not perfect. And I think that's very obvious from the beginning. And it's nice reading about someone, sometimes frustrating, but anyway, we can move on. But yeah. But I was going to say, what did he think about, well, I've kind of discussed it a little bit, but the going back and forwards in time, like part of me felt like I didn't like it that much. I felt like it could have done without, but at the same time, it did add to the story, like in a way, you know, it shows how they've grown and how they've come to where they are now. But yeah, I don't know. I do like it when books go back and forwards in time, but for me in this one, I don't know, it wasn't my favorite part of the book. Like when it went back in time, I was kind of like, I don't really care about this so much. But in saying that, there was the one scene when Olive and Bea are in the bathroom taking like pregnancy tests, and like Olive comes out, she's like, yes, it's negative, and Bea's like, oh, it's negative. So I think there were times, you know, when it's like, okay, so it's obviously showing that this is something both of them have been thinking about for a long time, the fact that one wants kids and one doesn't, and that was like the first time she's coming to terms with the fact that her friends want different things. So I guess there were positives, but I don't know, sometimes I was like, nah. But yeah.
I didn't actually like jumping in time on this occasion, because I think I found it quite hard to keep up, because usually a time jump is, you know, 1932 to present day. Yeah. And it's really easy to differentiate between what you're reading, but then sometimes it would be like 2015, then the next one would be 20. I'm like, I'm confused of where I am. I don't think it's the time jump big enough, and the situations weren't diverse enough to be able to differentiate. Yeah. So I sometimes found myself getting a bit caught up in what I was reading. I was like, but this hasn't happened yet, and I was like, oh, it's 2 years later. And I think that for me made it a little clunky, whereas definitive time jumps that are, you know, 100 years are very different. So I didn't dislike them, but I think as well, because it started like it's the epilogue, isn't it? It's 2020. It's like, and now we're suddenly living in present day 2019. That's only a year. That's really weird to be a time jump. And then, you know, we're suddenly in 2012, and I think maybe it's a modern book. But like, wow, is there already time jumps in our like generation? Yeah, that was my kind of dislike of the time jumps. I don't mind a time jump, but
see, I really liked the time jumps, because, like I say, you can change so much in a year. I mean, look at us a year ago. Like, we were at the start of the pandemic, and everything was so much different. I had only just lost my job, so I was in that
over in 6 weeks.
Yeah. So I quite liked the short time jumps, because you could see how much perspectives changed in such a short time. So how Olive goes from first off seeing how desperate Bea was for a baby, and then to the present in the story when she's so settled in being a mum. And I enjoyed seeing how the relationships between them all have shifted throughout, and also looking back at Olive's relationship with Jacob, I enjoyed the flip-flop. I also enjoyed, like, this is why the ending feels tacked on to me, because it's suddenly 5 years in the future and it's a really short epilogue. Like, I know epilogues are supposed to be short, but it just felt slightly tacked on, and everything was wrapped up a little too neatly for me. Like, there were some plot points, like, trigger warning, the disordered eating, that was suddenly dropped on us. Like, that I felt needed some build up, and the characters that are there, so Marcus and his two daughters, I felt Marcus is fine, his daughter's fine, but the fact that this big life event of the disordered eating is just dropped on us out of nowhere, and then suddenly, oh, wrapped up, fine.
It's very much brushed over, isn't it? Brushed under the carpet.
Like it was handled well. What were you going to say, Zoe?
I couldn't remember which character had the eating disorder, but you just saying that made me remember. I was like, where is the eating disorder in this book?
Yeah.
Can I add to your comment about the ending?
Yeah.
I didn't like it at all. I didn't. I wasn't. We were talking about it earlier, but I was so focused on my foot cross buttons. I didn't suck it. I didn't like it, and I'll tell you why. Because, I mean, I agree. I think it was very tacked on. Like, again, with the, oh, she's fine now. She's doing so much better. She lives with her boyfriend. It's great. I was like, it takes quite a long time to move on from an eating disorder, especially when she's gone through so much trauma already, which I can relate to.
Heart stopper. Yeah.
And but I also didn't like it because in some kind of backhanded way, they gave Olive kids, which is exactly what she didn't want. It's like, you've gone through the whole battle of, I don't want children. I'm happy with that decision. I've discovered myself. I'm okay with that. I found this community that also don't like it. I'm not weird. I'm happy with it. But yet somehow they still managed to give her children, which is like, okay, she literally cannot be a woman that doesn't want children, because I know technically they're not hers, but then she suddenly becomes this maternal role, doesn't she? Like, she leaves her meal to go and deal with this child, and it's like, but the whole book has been about not doing that and how irritating she finds it. So why have you sent her kids and given her this maternal role? It's as if Emma Gannon has written this, but in some way she still doesn't believe that women can't have kids. So, okay, she might not want to have a baby, but she still has to have children. She cannot be a woman with no child connection in her life.
I can see why it was probably like accepted, like when she was writing this. I can see, because they are a lot older. They are grown-up children, really. I mean, they're 17 and 15 when she first meets them. So by 2025, they are 22 and 20. But still, like you say, yes, they are kids. Pops, have you just run past me? Yes, you have. I wonder what that breeze was. I felt a breeze. But yeah, I totally get that, because yes, she is a stepmother. Yeah, Nori's just said also the fact Olive becomes basically a stepmother and Isla doesn't care anymore. I totally agree with that. Isla completely, like, she was the one friend that I really liked, and then she really disappointed me.
Isla?
Yeah, she really disappointed me, but we're not talking about that right now. Yeah, it's almost like she even mentions this when she's with B or whatever, B and Belle, I think it is, when it's like we start conditioning girls to be mothers as soon as they can walk. And I'm like, yeah, actually, I remember there was all these stereotypes. Like, my mum never forced it on me. Mum's fine having fur grandchildren. I don't want any grandchildren. She says she doesn't want grandchildren. She's happy with the fluffy variety down here. nibbling her nugs. But yeah, there is still that thing of girls, like, are always marketed, here's a doll that acts like an actual baby, and that you feed it and you have to change its nappy and things like that. There's these kitchen sets. With boys, it's, here, you can be an astronaut, you can be a builder, you can be whatever you want to be, and girls, it's, here, you can be a mother. And like, when I was growing up, I had like a pink phase. I had like all of these sorts of things. But now that I'm older, I'm just like, no, I'm a much more rounded human being. I don't need that. But it's a personal choice at the end of the day. But society is geared towards making women feel like they have to be mothers. And like Olive said, it's like, I might not want kids, but it has to happen so that the human race can continue. But it's not for me personally. I'm not taking that away from anyone else. And yeah, I thought it was quite an interesting topic.
Yeah.
What was that, Mum?
Yeah.
Some kids. Once you got the Handmaid's Tale.
Mum's just said you've got to have kids somehow, like some people have to, otherwise it becomes the Handmaid's Tale. And then just like, yeah.
There's a quote, I've just been looking through the ones that are highlighted, and there's one saying, wait, where is it in the book? Okay, I think it's just like Olive's like inner monologue. I'm not sure what page this is on because it doesn't tell me, but she says, I get it, you have to keep them alive, them being your kids, but you also have to keep your friendships alive. And I quite like that. It's like, that is kind of the main point of the book. Like, it shows how difficult it is, regardless of what's happening in your friends' lives, you know, if you're having kids or not. You know, I think that is something that is definitely a struggle, especially after university, like we kind of mentioned earlier. Like, once you leave, you kind of are like, oh, well, it's not so easy anymore to just visit whoever it is down the road. You know, it's very much like you're thrown into the abyss, and now you're left to your own devices a little bit.
Yeah, I think literally the friends that I still keep in contact with regularly are you two, Nori, Mariette, Eden, Lucy, Eric, Mario. 8 people from university, 1 person from school, and that's Grace. So literally, like, it's so easy to drift apart, and you have to work so hard to keep your friendships alive, as well as obviously if you have kids, but friendships are just as important. And I think eventually the characters realize this, but
I found that actually, I was talking what you were talking about, Jazz. Literally in the epilogue, I've cut 3 highlighted, or prologue, my apologies. It says at the first page, being young is terribly confusing, quite awful, really. And I was like, yeah, that's true. And then and then it says, so being an adult, it's like, I think everything will be good. I will finally be free. Adulthood equals freedom. Adult equals freedom. And like, you do think that, you think you're going to grow up and it's all going to be so easy, and then you're like, I hate adulting. This is the one that you, Jess, I could, looking back, perhaps the baby thing was always more of a blurry idea, one that I could never totally zoom in on. I could only really imagine it hypothetically. The idea of becoming a mother was something passed down to me from my mother and her mother's mother over centuries and centuries of social conditioning. It seemed like a no-brainer, like all the other milestones in the How to Be a Person manual.
I highlighted that as well.
That's what you've got to do. It's like, you have to have children. It's like,
it's like also that you have to be in a relationship once you hit your teenage years. You have to start dating and you have to be in a relationship. I didn't have my first relationship until I was 17. I've only had 2 my entire life. Like,
I've never had.
Yeah, and it's just like, you don't need that. Like, I would argue, like, friends are the most important. Friends and family are the most important thing. And sometimes friends can overtake that because friends become the family that you choose. I mean, me and Mum, us against the world, but that's beside the point. But yeah, it's like the friends that become the family that you choose are the most important thing, I think. And there is a lot of emphasis in this book on Olive doesn't feel complete unless she's in a relationship, and I'm like, that is bull. It's absolute bullshit. How like mopey she is when she's out of a relationship, and how little she looks after herself, and I'm like, honey, pull yourself together. Like, you don't need no man who only wants you as a baby making machine.
I think the only thing I would argue against that, I completely agree. But I guess because she's been in a relationship for so long, and because she's now in her mid-30s and she's seen all of her friends doing this whole thing that is expected, almost. I think that's why she's so like down in the dumps. for so long because she's like, well, I'm a
Yeah.
failure, like I can't do anything
Yeah.
right, you know. So
Yeah,
like I
it's
completely
not
get what you're
really that.
saying. But that's why I was so frustrated that she didn't talk to her friends, because they could have given her that pep talk, which
Yeah.
Yeah.
she needed.
No, I totally agree
Yeah.
with you as well. Like both sides of that argument.
Mm-mm.
This quote here, she says that compared to my friends, I guess I do feel a bit behind. I think it's a metaphor for my life. And that's kind of what you were saying, Janet. It's the kind of, she feels so like she's a failure because she's not up to where her friends are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you can't, that's a really important lesson to take away from it, is that you can't compare yourself to others. I know it's such a cliche thing to say, but in all honesty, everyone has their own path that they need to walk, and some people move at different paces along that path. So for instance, I've got a friend who's bye-bye, have a good night at work. Can you lock the door, please? Love you, bye. Mum's going to work. So yeah, what was I saying? I've got a friend who is a year younger than me. Her little one is a few months old now. And I'm just sat here like, I couldn't do that. That couldn't be me. I want my career. I want to be independent. I want all this sort of stuff. Like, I couldn't imagine having a life that depends on me more than the fluffy bonbon. So, yeah, but then there are people older than me that are still in like the same sort of situation as I am and have the same sort of views. And I'm like, there is no set time when I have to decide I want to do something. And I think that's a really important note to take away from Olive and her struggles, is that you are moving forward on your own path, not some generic path that everyone has to follow.
Yeah. Kind of leading on to my next thought, I saw one of the reviews on Goodreads after I'd finished and written mine. I was kind of scrolling through, seeing what other people thought, and someone said something along the lines of how in this day and age, this person thought it was kind of overdone, the amount of people who are like pushing Olive to be a mother. You know, like I think, yes, there are a lot of people who are like, oh, you don't want kids, fine, whatever, like amongst our sort of generation and our society now, it's more normal, I guess, to not want kids, and like there's less stigma about it. But I was curious to hear what you guys think. Like, do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think it was overdone? Like, there's a scene at, I think, a birthday or a baby shower, I can't remember. I think it was actually the baby shower, but once the baby's born, I think it's
her mum.
There's the mum, and then there's Seth's husband. I can't remember what his name is. I think it's Chris, but I might be wrong.
Chris, yeah.
But he says, let me see if I can find it. But yeah, there's Tiff. She's like, oh, you're going to be like a geriatric mum. Oh, you basically are already, or something. And he says, the husband says something like, oh, yeah, all good, thanks. Seth is doing most of the work, to be honest, like she should be. He does a wink. I'm sure you've been, then Olive is like, I'm sure you've been helping a lot. Not really, busy time at work, can't leave the team dangling. You know, and I was kind of like, I mean, I'm sure there are guys who would still have that kind of attitude, but I feel like it's very, like, even though it's meant to be now, like 2019 or wherever, it does feel a little bit like dated almost, the attitude. I don't know if that's just me and like my opinion on these things, and I don't know if it's meant to be exaggerated for the point of the book.
Yeah. They are 10 years older than us. Like, we are the next generation now. They're in their mid-30s, we're in our mid-20s. So maybe our generation isn't so like focused on that, and there's less sexism in it, but I don't know. Zoe?
I think
Chris is like, I don't know. I roll.
I don't care. I think Chris is just an idiot, personally. Yeah. The way he handles when I feel really bad when I say that at the bit where Seth locks the baby in the house.
When you've got baby brain.
Yeah. He was such an idiot about it. He was so mean. I felt a little bit over dramatic in one sense. I felt a bit, because I was like, you've been out 30 seconds, you know, he'll be okay. Like, but when you're in that mindset, just having a child, you're depressed already, you cannot comprehend anything, you already think you're failing. And then for that to happen, it is a big thing, like, especially for Steph, who's really struggling. And then to have that reaction from Chris was like, oh.
Yeah, and there's the fact he's hardly been helping. It's all on Steph to do everything, you know. And it's like, well, if we actually spent some time, then yeah, maybe it wouldn't have happened. But
Yeah, the fact that Cess also clearly has very severe postnatal depression,
Yeah.
and that he has, I think, depression generally, because Nori's also just mentioned that Olive has her dream job and career, and Cess took the job her mother wanted for her,
Yeah.
and she's very, very controlled and manipulated. I have this headcanon that Chris is an abusive husband, like maybe not physically, but emotionally and mentally, he's a manipulator. He makes her feel like shit. And she just goes along with it. She's got that sort of mentality of someone who has been who's been taken advantage of and has been abused, because she also takes the job that her mum wants her to take. She doesn't follow her own career path that she wants to do, because she's almost been conditioned to be subservient, and it's really sad to see that. And when she does lash out, it's at people trying to help her as well. And I really feel for Cess. Now that I know her character arc and her story, I actually really feel for her. Isla is the one that has my least amount of sympathy now, when she had the most to begin with.
Yeah, I found the scene at the end when they're at Jono's again and they're all like apologizing and stuff. Like, I don't know, I kind of felt like did Isla even apologize? Like, I can't remember what she said, but I don't know, I just was kind of like, but like, I understand like how much stress she would have been under seeing all of her friends, you know, succeeding in work and babies and marriage and whatever, and she's struggling. Like, I completely like empathize with her. Empathize or sympathize? I always get those two mixed up. Anyway, yeah.
I mean, unless you're crying for a child and you haven't told us, you sympathize.
Good to know.
Are there any hot Russian men we need to know about?
I don't think so. I forgot my point now. Anyway, but yeah, I think even at the end, like, I think I liked her more at the beginning than at the end, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like,
Yeah,
I think a lot of the other characters did have some kind of growth, but I'm not sure how much
Isla
she did.
almost
And
progressed.
yeah,
she was very much like, oh, I'm okay with it now. I'm moving on to new things, so I'm forgiving you now because I don't care about it as much. It's like, actually, you should have respected everything early on. You shouldn't have been so abusive. And like the surrogacy thing, was just like,
she just dropped it on her.
I felt that was a bit blue. Yeah, I kind of felt that wasn't really necessary either. Like, I was like, okay, well, maybe they had this conversation, but where did that come from? You know, and with the whole going back and forwards in time, maybe we could have had some hint of that conversation beforehand. Yeah, even if we don't see it exactly, maybe something leading up to it, you know?
Yeah.
But like, there never was.
She could have just mentioned it in passing when she's talking to Zeta or Colin or something like that. But it just suddenly appeared out of nowhere because Olive had apparently forgotten that she'd told her. I'm not even sure she had this discussion with Isla in the first place. I kind of get the feeling that Isla is quite manipulative, and like, I feel for anybody who has to go through fertility issues if they really want kids, and who has endometriosis or polycystic ovaries, anything like that, because it is so, I've been told it's excruciating. I'm lucky enough, I'm fortunate enough that I don't suffer that. But like, you don't take it out on someone who is trying to help you at the end of the day. Olive is the only one that steps up and tries to help her. She offers her a place when she and her husband need to take a break from each other because of the IVF, and Isla just takes advantage of it. She's there for days and days.
And then I was going to talk about that scene, like, and what you thought of it, because I thought like the way they leave things as well, like she just storms out. Like, I felt that final argument, I don't know if it's just me when I was reading it, but it kind of felt like it just suddenly escalated and they're suddenly angry at each other. And I was like, you easily could have had this as a discussion and it all could have been fine. But I think maybe both of them were on such weird like ground with each other, like with everything that had happened. It was almost like the spark, you know, or whatever the term is. But yeah.
I also kind of wish that they'd just kind of parted ways and Isla had almost never come back, because she doesn't really come back that much after that. Like, it's right near the end of the book that happens, but she's very distant, and even in that final chapter she's still very distant. And when she ignores Olive in the corner shop as well, I just kind of wish that Emma Gannon had gone all the way with it, and just Isla had just deleted everybody's contacts and gone off the rails and just said, look, I don't need any of you anymore, I'm going.
Yeah. One little detail I quite liked was the WhatsApp chat, like text messages, and it said like Sess is typing, or whoever it was, Via's typing like for ages, or like 2 hours later. Yeah, it wasn't just random. Yeah, I don't know. It was just like the little things. I was like, I appreciate that because that is so true.
You can feel the anxiety, can't you? Like this person's typing for so long. You're like,
yeah,
oh.
yeah.
You see those 3 little dots and you're like, come on.
I feel like nothing's ever resolved either. They get so angry at each other and they hate each other, and yet next second it's all fine. But then when they apologize, she's like, "It's fine, Olive. You were always a bitch. Like, so, Olive, you're always mean." It's like, how are you forgiving her? Like, she's apologizing to you for something I don't actually think she needs to apologize for, and you're still berating her and saying that's just who she is. I didn't feel like her apology at the end was even taken well.
Yeah, they're just not good people.
They're not very nice to her. I don't think they're very nice.
Yeah, no, they're not good friends. The only good friend I think Olive has is Colin.
Yeah,
and even at the beginning, there's a line that says, "Read the fucking room, Colin."
Yeah.
I think it's just that they're bonded by this eternal friendship that they've had, and they do clearly care about each other. But there's far more arguments and, oh, I feel this drift between us. I feel there's now a gap between us. There's distance between us that we're not talking about. And I feel like it's their friendship is quite weird, and it takes Jono to get through everything. And then they're like, yeah, that's true. I understand, Olive. You're always horrible. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, all of us have been friends 6-7 years. Like this September, Zoe and I and Mariette and I have been friends 7 years. Like
lifetime,
nearly a decade. And they say if a friendship lasts 7 years or more, it's going to last a lifetime. But that's because you all know too much. But like I can imagine, like if we had a problem, if someone upset someone in this group, we would all go, look, I have a problem. Here it is. Can we talk it out? And we wouldn't just be like, yeah, I forgive you, but you're also a bitch. And it's just like, that's not how you handle friendship dilemmas. And I kind of get where Emma Gannon is going for. I like that it presents a not perfect friendship, because I think perfect friendships are too common in fiction. Like we like to idealize that, but also at the same time, I'm like, why is Olive hanging around with this group of people? It just feels like it's a cop
It's so
out.
toxic.
It is a bit toxic, isn't it?
And I mean, from the beginning, it's and I felt like even the scene when they're at university, you know, the first flashback or whatever, when they're all like, it's their last day in their uni house, it felt overdone. But then I'm also like, is it meant to be Olive looking back through like rose tinted glasses a little bit and being like, oh, that was just so, kind of like you said earlier, like, was it really that great? Or well, we don't know, I guess.
Yeah, when I moved out of my house, like I was only really close to Mariette in that house. Like we had our other 2 housemates, we were friends, like we were good friends and everything. But Mariette and I were like that at uni. Like we were as close as friends could get. And even I wasn't like sobbing and being like, oh my God, I'm going to miss this so much. We were like, we're excited for the next part of our lives. Like we won't be apart for too long. In fact, Mariette's mum said they won't be apart for too long. And we now see each other practically every year. We're always messaging and stuff like that. Yes, we can message more. We're dreadful at it. But when we do get chatting, it's like nothing's changed. And we don't need to be in each other's pockets all the time. Like even when we lived in the same house, we were as thick as thieves, but we weren't in each other's pockets every minute of every day.
Yeah, there's still some independence.
Yeah, that's a healthy relationship. The friendship that these 4 have is not healthy. Like it's so codependent, and I don't know whether that was her intention or not, but it just made me really not like most of them. If not every single one of them, including Olive, sometimes got on my nerves as well.
Yeah.
But
from the narrative, I mentioned to you, Jess, there's a couple of continuity errors in this book, and they bug. Like, I find them really irritating when I find them. So I'm like, do you not have an editor? Like, come on.
What were the continuity errors? Because I wasn't really noticing.
There's one early on when they go to Jono's. I don't know if I'll be able to find it. I may have highlighted it, but I don't remember. They go to Jono. I mean, they're really little things and probably don't bother anybody else, but I find them really annoying. Is when they go to Jono's and the girls have all decided that they're going to go and they're not going to stay, but they're like, oh, Cess is in the toilet because she can't stop peeing or whatever. And then Olive comes in and sits down, and B says, we're not going to go, we're going to go, or whatever it is. And then Olive's like, oh, why? What's the deal? And then the narrative writing goes, then B turns and looks at the others. I was like, the others? Cess is still in the toilet. And then, And then so there's that one, and then Cess comes out of the toilet, and I'm like, you were being looked at by B, but you weren't at the table. those things bother me. I'm like, you just said she was in the loo, and now you're saying that B's looking at her. So make it up.
Yeah, I also have little things like that.
Yeah, they really shouldn't, but they really do.
It's the use of Americanisms.
The Americanisms, yeah, they bothered you.
Yeah, like putting some pants in a tote bag, and I'm just like, you are not from California, you are from Sussex. Yeah, and the using a Z in like realize and ostracize, I'm like, no, there is an S there, not a Z. And I stopped noticing it after a while because I knew it would just annoy me.
Yeah. And there's two other. Sorry, Janet. Sorry.
No, you carry on.
There was two other continuity ones. There was one, but I can't remember it. The other one is when Isla and Janet, Isla and Olive have their argument. Isla goes, "Oh, you're so selfish," and that's, it's a big thing that Isla's called Olive selfish, because then she's like, "I think you should leave." But then later on in the book, Olive apologizes to Isla for calling her selfish in her apartment. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it wasn't Olive. So I went back into the book, went back to that chapter, and I was like, it wasn't Olive that said that Isla was selfish. Isla said that Olive was selfish. No, not once did Isla say that she was selfish. Yet she later in the book, and it makes Olive apologize to Isla for calling her selfish in that argument. It's very specific. It's like, I'm sorry for calling you I'm selfish in my apartment. I was like, you didn't call her selfish in your apartment. And it's there is another one, but I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, little things.
2 or 3 I picked up on. And they bother me because I'm like, this is they're just little things. I'm like, that's silly.
Unless it's Gannon subtly hinting to us that Isla is a master manipulator.
Possibly. That doesn't explain why Cess was in the loo.
No. And on that bombshell moment, my last proper question. I technically have 2 left, but
I've got one from Norrie quickly.
Okay.
From Norrie. They were hoping that one of the 4 were a gay. I mean, that is a mood. Statistically, it is very unlikely that all 4 of them are straight. I mean, look at our group. There's not one of 2 not straight beans here. But yeah, statistically, the likelihood of them all being straight and there only being 1 token gay character in the whole narrative is very unlikely, especially in a city like London with big pride parades.
And it's set in 2019, so like,
when pride could still happen, and 2 big YouTubers, Dan and Phil, came out. So
good times.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Good.
So my last question. Do you think fiction books about women like not wanting kids should be more mainstream? Because I don't think they're that mainstream. Like, I feel like there's a lot of books that are just, I don't know, they don't talk about it as a topic like Olive does. Like maybe they've had the kids, or maybe they're too young to have the kids or whatever, but there's not so much about not having the kids at all.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I think like I'm going to bring up my own writing here because it is a major thing for one of my characters, because she couldn't have kids and then she's given the opportunity to have kids, and it's all she wants because it's her chance of being normal. but there's a lot of genetic experimentation that goes along to get there. So it's not really the best thing. But I do think that it shouldn't be taboo, and it is still taboo for a woman to not want kids. But at the end of the day, it is your body. You do with it what you want, as long as you're not hurting anybody else. You do you. Like, it's the same with body modifications. I wouldn't tell someone, you can't get gauges, you can't get this tattoo, you can't get this body mod, you can't dye your hair this color or cut it this way, because at the end of the day, it's your flesh organ. Do with it what you want. And it's the same with having kids, because that is a big commitment on your body as well, because women can get calcium deficiencies, we can have all sorts of like issues that go along with growing a human inside you. It is very dangerous, even in this day and age. And I would not judge anyone who said they didn't want kids. Like, one of my friends desperately wants kids, but she and her husband haven't been able to, and now they're looking at adoption. And I know that she would be the best mum in the world, because she has so much love in her heart to give. And like, you'll know me, I'm not religious, but I even offered up a little prayer going, if someone is there, let her be able to have kids, if not her own biological kids, then be able to adopt, because like, I know she would be perfect. I wouldn't go that far for myself, but my friend I know would be perfect for it. And I do think that women being able to see that not wanting kids doesn't make you any less than you already are. I think it is important for these sorts of discussions to be presented to women a lot more, because we are just raised in the society to think that, right, we have to go to school, we have to go to uni, we have to find a husband, settle down, marry, have kids, forget your career, that sort of thing. So that's my waffly 2 cents on it.
I'm not going to because I have to go in a minute, so I'm not going to open up this discussion too much, but leading on from you, Jess, is the thing with me personally as well. I think you're right, Janet, because I think it is something that could be talked about more freely, because I like that Emma Gannon throughout it periodically has quotes from real women, doesn't she?
Yeah.
So I think, answering your question, yes, I think it should be more mainstream, because I think it's less of a taboo now, but it still is a taboo and it shouldn't be. And I think, going to what you said, Jess, with adoption, because I'm not sure if I want kids for many reasons, I think if I did want kids, I would adopt, because there are so many kids that don't have families. But then my other argument about not having kids is, why would I want to bring a child into the current world we have? Why would I want to bring a child into this world not knowing what their future is going to look like, not knowing that if our world can cope with it, overpopulation? Every other day there's some hate crime or terrorist attack on the news, or there's all these environmental issues that aren't being taken seriously, politics, everything. Like, we don't live in a perfect world. Say again?
Pandemic.
Pandemic. Pandemic. Things about, gay hate crimes and things like that. Like, why would I want to bring a child into a world that is full of hatred, possible fear? Like, even the stuff on the news recently with women and safety. Like, I don't think I want to bring a child into this world. Like, I don't think that's fair. And I think if I was to have children, maybe adoption would be a way to go, because there are children that are living in a harsh world that don't have a family. So maybe books could be started to be written about that. And I think this is such a pioneer of a book, because it's the first one, like you say, Janet, that I've ever read that is solely around that. And does kind of isn't afraid to broach the topic of it being a taboo and people's opinions of it, but it's also opening up people's eyes to what you can have. Like, and you can find women that are the same as you, and it's not everything in the world to have a child. I think it's beautiful, and I don't wish infertility on anybody, and I don't wish struggles on it. And I think it is a magical thing. It freaks me out a little bit, but that's because I'm crazy about that kind of thing. But it is a beautiful thing, and it is a great creation, but it's not for everybody. I don't think women should be chastised or scrutinized for not wanting that personally.
I think bouncing off of that very, very quickly, yes or no answer. Did this book make you feel seen? Because honestly, for me, it did. Because like you say, I'm an ace bean. I don't deal with the physical thing of like creating a baby, that it did make me feel seen, that there are women out there that feel the same as me. Because whenever I say I don't want kids, people are like, oh, you'll change your mind, it's a phase. But this actually made me feel seen, that there are women out there that feel the same way. So I'm guessing, like, do you guys feel that same way as well?
Yeah. I mean, I'm very much, like I said earlier, and similar to what Zoe said, like I've considered adoption, you know, like a lot. And again, I'm not planning on doing it anytime soon, but just, yeah, it's something that I feel like, I don't know, I like the idea of being a mum, but it's just the idea of childbirth that I don't agree with. Like the fact that I don't get why people want to do that. Even being pregnant, I'm like, why would you want to put yourself through that voluntarily? Like, no, thank you. But yeah, so I think it was nice seeing someone who has, like, who's going through this and what options are available to her, you know, even if it's not the same for everyone. Like, some people might, like, you know, he talked about the ending and how she kind of adopts someone else's kids. Like, you know, that might not be for everyone. You know, they might not want to adopt anyone. Like, that should be okay as well, you know, or whatever other situations you find yourself in. Like, you know, it is okay to do whatever you're doing as of right now. So
I agree.
yeah,
A good book choice, Janet.
Very good book choice. So,
you know, yeah, I thought it'd be a good discussion. So
yeah, I am really glad I read it. But so that was Olive. Our April pick has been picked by the lovely Nori, and we are going to be reading something very different next month. We are reading the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. It is a horror. It is very dark. We will be doing another discussion like this next month. But I will, before we get into it, list all of the trigger warnings. Nori has very kindly sent us all in the group chat a list of the trigger warnings. So we will put that up before we go live, so that if anyone wants to read it, I'll also put it up on the Twitter when we finish this, a list of all the trigger warnings, so that if you do want to read it, you are fairly warned. Nori is the only one out of us that has read it, so I'm trusting what they've said. If we come across anything else, we will put it down, obviously. So that will be our April pick. Our May pick is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, and that is Mariette. Yes, Zoe.
I don't know, I can't remember if you mentioned it at the beginning. I just saw another trigger warning in this one. I'm not sure we mentioned. There is a really brief reference to R. Kelly and sexual abuse.
Yes,
just if that's a trigger for anybody, because it's also quite a recent topic. So it's not very long. There is a reference to R. Kelly and sexual
I was pleased that you mentioned it and everything.
So just fair warning for that as well. Sorry,
that's okay. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires is by Grady Hendrix. It's a horror, so people might want to read it, they might not want to. If you're sensitive to things like horror, gore, I think there's abuse in there, rape, assault, things like that. It's quite dark. So if it's not your cup of tea, we completely understand. But if you do want to read it with us, please feel free. We will be putting up trigger warnings and books that we are going to be reading on the Twitter. So make sure that you are following us at A Novel Bunch 1. It is linked in part 1 of this. I put all of our links in there. And yeah, so Mariette is May's pick. So I'm going to talk to her about her hosting the quiz this month. We will see. And yeah, so thank you very much for watching, everybody. It's been lovely talking to you two again. I miss my beans. So yeah, thank you very much for tuning in, people, to this very chaotic stream. Hopefully next month it'll go a bit smoother. And yeah, we will see you in a couple of weeks for the quiz. And until next time, stay safe, wear a mask, wash your hands, and keep reading, everybody. Bye.